Welcome to Cutting Edge Web Content Development, a podcast by ButterCMS. Today, we're joined by Annika Haataja, SEO Director at Secret Digital. Welcome, Annika.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about your career. You've worked in SEO for a while. What are some of the projects you've worked on?
Yeah, so I started in SEO a bit, I guess, in an unconventional way. I started it as a freelancer with basically no skills. So I was doing my master's in Brighton Uni, and somebody just posted a job ad for marketing, a student marketer. And it just happened to be like the great time for me to sort of jump off to studies, to do studies and work at the same time. So that's basically how it all started. I started with this local business who needed everything marketing wise, whether it was ads, posters, PR, SEO. And so that I gradually had to kind of learn not just the theory of uni, but the practical aspects of marketing. And especially from like local business point of view, it was actually quite satisfying because you could see the business sort of gradually growing as you've been sort of helping them. And then gradually I got some more clients, and that was kind of my, job for a few years, even past studies as well. And then through that, I got my first agency job when I moved to New Zealand. And yeah, since then have had some SEO manager jobs in-house, and again, back in an agency at the moment. So yeah, moving kind of from like more local, small businesses to now, although some of our clients are also sort of more local to, I guess, us back up in Bristol, but also sort of more enterprise, larger, big brands. So yeah, kind of done a full circle, I guess, in the sense that, yes, seeing smaller businesses grow, but then also big businesses might compete against even bigger businesses. So it can be very satisfying to be an SEO, I would say.
Yeah, where was one of those projects where you really saw the results and are like, wow, I'm hooked on this. This is just awesome being in SEO.
Yeah, I would say probably some of my earliest like freelance clients when, through organic, they started to make actual like revenue, which they didn't used to get. It was all sort of word of mouth, and then seeing them move from one premise to a bigger premise and hiring people. So kind of seeing that, the startup mentality to growing to an actual business and sort of feeling like, oh, I've been part of that. So that's been obviously cool. But I would say even like our current clients, sort of seeing their growth from, a small scale e-commerce site to actually competing with like some of the biggest brands in the UK, and all through sort of SEO and sort of e-commerce optimization. So it's always nice to see like the tangible results, not just, oh, we've grown the traffic by 20%, but actually the impact on the business itself has been, really cool.
Yeah, that was something that really interested me when we first discussed some topics, was this idea of tying SEO to broader business objectives. I mean, you mentioned there in your success, you didn't mention the rankings, you didn't mention the traffic, you said growth, you said revenue. I'm like, wow, those are business results. So talk about, this idea of helping clients align their broader business objectives to SEO strategies.
Yeah, so I think as SEOs, we sometimes make assumptions, which is fine. Like you should follow your instincts and also your expertise. But I think sometimes it's really important to kind of break it down into like the basics. Like, what is the purpose of this business? What are the actual goals for their operation? What are your clients' own goals? So you often have some kind of person that you're speaking to. There's a reason why you're speaking to them. Therefore, they will probably have some goals that they're trying to achieve with SEO as well. So it's really important to like look outside of just SEO, because if you're looking at it from organic marketing point of view, you might go to the wrong direction already from the start. So maybe there's like huge search volume for a product that you think you should be promoting a lot with organic and writing lots of content, but perhaps the client only knows that the margins are really small for that product and they barely make any money, although there might be, intangible and indirect benefits of still targeting certain keywords. But without knowing that, you can never kind of make enough ROI from SEO to, justify the expense. So I think, you can definitely make some assumptions, but it's best to go not just like educated guesses from SEO, but also understanding the client And not all websites are there to make money, even though we think that we should always bring revenue, organic revenue to the client. But, there might be a completely different purpose for a site. For example, I don't know, there might be sites that want to educate people or connect people or raise awareness. So it's really important to, get to the bottom of what's this business about and how does this website assist this business to make that happen. It's really important to do that. And then after that, you can start breaking it down. Okay, so let's say the revenue is the core goal. What's currently driving the revenue? What could be driving the revenue if it was done the right way? Perhaps you can find out what their competitors are doing. How can you assume, like, for example, how they're making their revenue, and then how was the revenue coming from? Obviously, traffic and conversions. So how do we ensure that we can amplify them both? So find out like things that work, do more of them, and things that don't work now but could work with your proper sort of SEO strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned in there, the idea that you're looking at both conversions and traffic. And, sometimes when people think SEO, they think of just traffic. But you also mentioned conversions. That would be really important if a business objective obviously is revenue. You don't want to just drive traffic there. When you have a website that's trying to achieve something like, for instance, revenue as your business objective, as an SEO, you're trying to drive traffic there, also get conversions. You're having to work with several different business teams probably to do this. Probably your IT team, maybe your marketing team. How do you coordinate across these different teams to work together on this common objective?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess like the main type of project that comes to mind where SEO is, I guess, the coordinator, or we say maybe project manager in a sense, is, a site migration is often driven by an SEO need, by it includes multiple different teams. And I guess the fact that SEO's nature, in a sense, is that it's long game. It can be very beneficial to have that mindset with these projects, and therefore an SEO can be quite a suitable project manager for these types of jobs. So I guess in terms of coordinating different teams, again, one example would be not just the website migration itself, but actually speaking about conversions. We're currently working on sort of two-pronged approach with a client of moving their blog and their product support to this big content library. And that was actually driven from an SEO audit that we did. And although it's not purely just SEO, we're not looking at increasing rankings or traffic, but actually improving the experience for the user as a whole, because we realized that, yes, they do come to the site, but then they don't do anything. They don't follow up. They don't continue the journey. They don't, inquire. So often these kinds of projects might include, for example, for this one, we have, product team, brand team, comms team, content team, technical, dev, design, and they're all involved. So it's definitely really important to understand what started as an SEO project suddenly is like this whole organization is involved. So being able to coordinate that with, different tools or different comms systems is really important. But also, I guess, what SEOs often, find challenging is things don't necessarily get implemented. And that's often so the case with even these big projects. They might span what you started as like a few week project might be 6 months in the end. I think that kind of accountability aspect is something that we need to get better at managing. So whether it's setting a project timeline and being very clear in terms of what the expectations are from different teams, when do you need them, how much involvement should they have? Because again, that's almost like a business case for a company, like how many people are involved, that's going to cost them money. So being able to, bring that forward at the start of the project, then there hopefully won't be like massive surprises, and people know, I guess, who to pass the baton to once they're done with their work, who's next and who's next after that. So they can sort of, grow quite massive. So being able to manage it from the start is really important, whether it's through, project management tools or regular comms, etc. So very much kind of taking that role as a project manager is important.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to kind of unify those teams, is to act as a project manager, get buy-in, make sure everyone knows, clearly who's responsible for what, when it's due, those kind of things, while they seem simple, really have an impact on how people feel about the project. They feel like it's moving forward well, that they know what they're supposed to do, as opposed to not having that. And maybe you have people trying to do things that are outside of their scope or not getting it done in time, and you have pointing fingers. So, all right, project management tools, taking control from a project management perspective can help unify those teams. How do you create a culture within those teams, or maybe within a company, that appreciates the value that SEO is going to bring to that project?
Yeah, I think a few people that I know in SEO especially have been struggling with this quite recently. And I have also, back in being an in-house SEO manager, especially when you are essentially the only person who knows SEO and who fully can say that they believe in it, which is understandable, because obviously I wouldn't know everything about PPC and be like, oh, why do we spend so much on PPC? Everybody's got their own thing. But I think it's not necessarily a bad place to be in, being the only person with that SEO knowledge and that education. I guess you just need to accept your role as an educator for people and be ready to continuously bring in that knowledge to these conversations. I think what's also important with, I guess, all roles really is to kind of try to get more visibility in the company. You could do, presentations, maybe training, write case studies, just blast out all that SEO knowledge that you've got. Obviously in a way that doesn't annoy anybody, but in a way that actually benefits others. So, for example, if you've worked in a project, to shout out about the results, because often as SEOs we're like, oh, well, I expected that. I knew that was going to happen. So let's move on to the next one. But actually not everybody else feel that way, and they didn't necessarily see it coming. So it's whether you're in an agency or in-house role, it's really good to try to amplify this sort of results and the outcomes that you have generated. Because otherwise people, how could they know if you don't tell them? So almost creating whether you're in-house role, small case study of your project, maybe that sparks an interest in other teams, oh, we'd like something like that. Perhaps you get more questions. Maybe you can also ask people to send you questions, because then if they are interacting with you, if they're making an effort to actually find out more about, SEO and how it can help the business, then they're already showing engagement and, interest to learn. So it's very much like an interaction, and trying to, keep the interaction going, and don't hide away in your little corner and just do your tech SEO work, but actually, try to amplify yourself.
No, I love that. I love the idea of kind of doing an internal case study, a product update of, how the project is going. I think there's so many opportunities there to call out the work that people are doing to make these SEO gains happen that are outside of your team. And that could bring perhaps this greater feeling of connection, to accomplish this goal. It's not just SEO. If I'm on the dev team, and I see this business result that we've got so far, and it's called out that, hey, the dev team did this and that helped us get there, that's going to make me feel tied into that. Maybe more willing to help as future projects happen.
Yeah,
great idea.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. And I guess it's easy to fall into the trap of feeling, oh, well, I'm just serving all the other teams, but I've got, my own objectives to look after. But actually, when you start having these conversations with other teams, then it's going to be a two-way street. They might help you in the future with your project, whether it's maybe branding or getting, a product manager into your team meeting and actually explain more about the products. And it's never sort of one-way street necessarily. And it's kind of important to keep up those relationships and be a core part of the wider team as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd mentioned earlier about, site migration is a good example of kind of a cross-functional event that happens where SEO may kind of project manage. In an event like that, just from a tactical perspective, how could you kick off something like that so that you could break down these silos, get everybody to work together on something like that that's going to be, for a good-sized site, it's going to be several weeks, if not several months, to complete that. What do you think? What would be the ways to kick off something like that? Yeah,
I think if we're talking about a big project, treating it almost like a business case for the business as well. Understanding like what are the objectives, who's involved, what's the ideal timeline, what's the non-ideal timeline, but potentially like realistic timeline. What tools do you need? What's the budget? And treating it almost like you're selling it to the business first, because you have to obviously have enough ammunition for it to be successful, but also, internally selling it is important. And I guess for the teams to understand where do they sit in, when do they come into the project, and what are your expectations to them, and vice versa. How can you help their work be easier and smoother? It's not going to be their main job necessarily. They might have a day-to-day job on the side whilst it's happening. So it's really important to, arrive into these projects like with empathy, but also, some authority. I think is good, because it is essentially going to be something that could potentially make and break the business. So if you fail with a migration, it could be, tens of thousands of pounds down the drain. So obviously taking it seriously, but also, being flexible where you can be. Any project obviously ideally has a great project plan. So I guess, especially if you're working with multiple different teams, try to find out, what's their way of working? What are the elements that you can be quite flexible with? Perhaps you can share, if you don't already, share like a project management space, and, set rules of, engagement. How often do you want to meet up? What kind of reports do you need to present to the other teams, and vice versa? And essentially just have that dialogue since, from the beginning. Then hopefully there won't be any, nasty surprises moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love how you were talking about selling it internally. I think an SEO migration, for instance, can be a big benefit to each of the teams, even though, it may be led by SEO. For instance, if you're migrating, it may take workload off of the dev team because they're switching over to a system or a framework maybe that's easier for them to maintain. For the marketing team, it may help them reach their marketing objectives for that quarter. So really selling that internally, that, hey, this part you're doing for SEO is going to help you reach your objectives as a team as well. So you're contributing to this whole. I love that. Any tools or kind of technologies that you've found are useful in facilitating this collaboration?
Well, even with our sort of current clients, if we're talking to various different teams, we do most of it like the comms via Slack, but obviously it depends on, each company have their own comms tools, but making it as sort of easy as possible. So whatever you use in your day-to-day, you shouldn't have to log into something new to do a migration project or any other SEO project. So essentially making it as flexible as possible. But then, like mentioned about, the project management tools, absolutely. Any shared space. One thing that I think we will want to start doing a bit more as an agency, but also what I would recommend to in-house teams is to get more involved in each other teams' meetings if you can, where relevant, because then you can start to hear perhaps like what are their pain points, what is it that your team or yourself could potentially help them with, and perhaps this project is one of the elements that is a key to fixing those pain points. So very much trying to unsilo yourself from other teams. I know it's easier said than done, because it's really easy to, stay in your lane and focus on your own thing. But any sort of, shared spaces that you can, infiltrate, the better. Like I said, if you set the expectations up front, set up goals, then you can all celebrate together in the end when it's all done. And perhaps, it's a really good sort of spark to any other projects that you might have. Because I guess as SEOs, we don't necessarily need to focus too much on, we need to rank this page higher. But the same principles are within SEO are across the board, like in various situations. For example, this sort of content library that we're building to a client, that there will be some indirect SEO benefit, but that's not the only reason why we're doing it. So you might want to add more personalization to the site to make it a nicer experience for the user. Perhaps you want to use different tech, create like an AI chatbot element on the site. Anything that's sort of outside of the traditional realms of SEO. And that's when you can start bringing in those different teams and work with them, collaborate on some cool projects and start building those relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Slack, find ways that you can bring people together on these tools where you can collaborate. I found a lot of times based on what you were saying earlier about kind of sharing results like a case study internally, if you have some kind of metric you're trying to improve and there's, some tool that, lets you monitor that, just, showing the team, hey, here's where you can look at where that's improving, whether that's Google Analytics or Page Speed Insights or maybe Salesforce if you're tracking like conversions and such. But, giving the team the opportunity to be able to monitor that sometimes can be a rallying point, but also sometimes can be a difficult point. Like if you're not hitting your goals. So how do you address if people are resistant or, they're not coming along? You've got all the tools in place. You tried to rally them around this, sell it to them internally. How do you overcome that?
I guess you kind of need to understand why they're resisting, because although, again, can definitely understand it from, one point of view that, let's say that PPC is making us X amount of money. SEO has never really made us that much money. Why would we spend more money on something that doesn't clearly work? I think those situations probably happen all the time and it can be obviously very stressful, but there is also a reason why you're in this job, whether it's an actual job or perhaps you've been hired as an agency. There clearly is some kind of a need for you to be there, and you have the right skills and experience to do something good for the business. So firstly, I guess remembering that and trusting that there's a purpose for you. And then generally how you would ever build any kind of business case. We're not just talking about like SEO projects themselves, but I guess selling SEO internally is just something that I think everybody probably has to do at some point in their lives. Even for a client that's already paying you, you might need to kind of re-educate and re-explain things and justify that we should continue with this because it will work eventually. But even if you have case studies of other sites that have done really well, if you haven't got that from your own part, but perhaps your competitors, you can clearly tell what their sort of strategy is and perhaps even estimate, based on average conversion rates from industry in terms of how their website is actually doing versus your website. That's perhaps a starting point. But also what I found, especially like the C-suite that are often a bit harder to educate, but also to warm up to SEO, forecasts are incredibly difficult, but incredibly powerful tools to show the value of like future SEO, because we don't have a crystal ball. We can't really tell what actually will happen, but we can create quite good estimates in terms of what's the potential in the future. So whether you use a tool that does it automatically, we sometimes use, for example, SEO Monitor, or you can create your own calculations as well based on, rankings, click-through rates, traffic, conversion rates, and therefore revenue. That kind of data is just like gold mine to anybody sort of above you who decides on an SEO budget. So although it's, some people might feel like, oh, it's too much, I shouldn't have to do this. But actually, that also can add more skills to your skill set, being able to produce these forecasts, like analyze data, sell again internally, and justify spend, which is not obviously easy, and it's almost like a negotiation part as well. So try to speak their language, really understand, what are they interested in? Like, how can you help them? And if you're speaking to C-suite, perhaps talk about a bit more businessy language. Whereas if you're speaking to devs, try to learn, okay, this SEO element requires this, how we would say in an SEO, but a dev would probably use a bit more technical language. Try to be a bit of a chameleon and get them, and they will probably get you more as well.
Yeah, no, it's good advice. I think we all have our different languages that we all work on the website, whether it's IT or whether it's marketing or product or SEO. But learning those little buzzwords, learning to speak kind of to their language, the things that they're looking at as objectives. I think the projections part's really interesting. I have never seen an SEO agency make projections. I know internally when I've worked on the SEO projects, I've done that myself. Like, hey, if we got to this rank with this keyword, how much more traffic and at our current conversion rate, how much would that be in revenue? But I've never seen anyone show that before, which I think really could be powerful to a C-suite, because they do work in that world all the time of what do we project we're at and where are we at right now, and what's the gap and what's it going to cost to close that gap. So yeah, really interesting. Well, let me ask you a bit of kind of career advice here. You worked in your career for a little while. If you could go back in a time machine, talk to yourself at the very beginning of your career when you were that freelancer, taking that first internship, or that not internship, but that first freelance job. What piece of advice would you give yourself that you know now that you didn't know then?
I guess I would say that there's no one right way of learning your skill, like whether it's SEO, it could be like development, UX, or even outside of marketing or websites. But you might end up in the same place, whether you studied or not, or whether you learned it yourself, or you did a course, or somebody mentored you. There's not really one way of getting to the point where you want to be. As long as you're interested in the subject, I think you'll probably do really well. And if you're lucky enough to find that subject that you really like, just keep on pushing, because you will eventually probably get to also a position that you really want to be at. And I guess, it's not a competition. It's more, everybody's trajectory is very different and it goes in cycles. So just, I guess, accepting that and just knowing what you really like to do is perhaps more important than any title or salary, which I mean, it's easy to say, like after being in the industry for a few years, but I think that's more important, because like if you end up doing it for 10 years and you just realize that I've hated it the whole time, are you really successful? So
that's tough. If you're successful but you hate it, then that's a tough position to be in. So find what you love and take your trajectory, whatever it is, to get there. Yeah. I think if you love it, you will find ways to be successful at it. It's just
exactly. Yeah.
It's going to come. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, let me ask you, is there any place that you go for like inspiration, books, podcasts, conferences, or something that really just kind of like gets you going?
Well, I think all of them, definitely what you just mentioned. Well, conferences are great because you do get to have like genuine conversations with people, and then you realize that, the person that I've been following for years is also just the person, and I can just have a conversation with them. So there isn't like this magic, I don't know, like halo around them, but they're just people. But also just like getting like new perspectives and ideas from people is, conferences can be great. But I think as a like perhaps more accessible and like daily thing, I would definitely recommend LinkedIn. It's definitely improved in the past few years. Like a lot of people are now moving into LinkedIn and they're sharing a lot. And I tend to, not every day because like it can get a bit overwhelming, but sometimes having morning coffee before work, just opening LinkedIn and seeing like what's happening. Because the SEOs out there are really good at posting, and it's good to kind of keep up with. I get all my SEO news now from LinkedIn, and I do definitely recommend. But obviously podcasts. Like some people prefer. I do sometimes put some podcasts on while I'm working because it's it kind of opens your brain a little bit more, and also like we're busy people. So it's good to have that option for sure. And I think a lot of people learn better when they hear rather than read or consume in other ways. So I think, podcasts like these are great because you see, what other people are doing really, and kind of open up a little bit of a door to, different like new ideas.
I think especially, in an agency world is a little different because you have so many different clients all the time. It really kind of keeps your mind open, but especially in a brand position, it can be very easy to get blinders on and just kind of get in the box of your own day-to-day work. Whereas, go to a conference, listen to a podcast, it helps you take off those blinders for a moment and see things from other people's perspective. And that can be really helpful in your career, just to open your mind to something new you hadn't thought about, or maybe that you knew, but you just hadn't really focused on in a while. So, Well, tell us a little bit about your agency, Seeker. What kind of clients do you work for? How can people find you online? Things like that.
Yeah, so we're UK based, but we've got clients pretty much across the world, like US, Europe, and elsewhere. And at the moment, most of our clients are sort of e-commerce and SaaS and sort of enterprise brands. We do work with sort of smaller clients as well. But yeah, those are kind of like our specializations. So we do anything when it comes to like organic marketing and SEO. So tech, content, links, digital PR, and very much sort of try to look at it from like a holistic point of view and make sure that our clients have all the resources they need to, get organic visibility. And we're across socials. We also sponsor Brighton SEO event. So if anybody ever wants to go to a conference, we'll most likely be there. And very much sort of very focused on LinkedIn and Twitter, or X. And myself, I'm mainly on LinkedIn as well. So that's probably where you can find me best.
Excellent. Yeah, I always have a hard time remembering to say X instead of Twitter.
I don't think I will ever say it automatically.
Well, where can people find Seeker online? What's the
our website is seeker.digital. Yes. And like I said, LinkedIn, definitely one of the sort of main places. If you want to message us directly, you can do so, or send us an email at hi@seeker.digital.
Excellent. Hey, thanks so much, Annika. I really appreciate your perspective. Some of the ideas really, really helpful in working together on a website with SEO and being able to kind of sell that to the various groups. Really important. Thank you so much.
I love the topic. Thanks, Jonathan.
Sure.
Cutting-edge web content development is brought to you by ButterCMS. To find out how you can build better with Butter, stop wasting dev time, and free your marketers from your legacy CMS, visit ButterCMS.com. Also, make sure to search for cutting-edge web content development in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at ButterCMS, thank you for listening.